So today we are going to have first I'm going to talk to you briefly about the non-functional requirements that a lot of time people don't think when start a project. Then we are going to start talking about the DLT classifications by data structure, with another taxonomy that is important to you in order to have the overall picture. And then we will start talking about the different DLT platforms that we are commonly used in the current situations, including the Alastria platform, but a lot of another ones. And then you finally, I hope you have a clear view of what you to do and which is the platform that you are going to select. Then starting for the non-functional requirements, I wonder that maybe you sometimes meet with your clients and start talking with them about the product. I want a product that makes these kind of functions and make this kind of transactions, and that will be able to select from the mobile and from the web and things like that. That is fine. This is the functional requirements that everyone usually knows. But one thing that a lot of people is forgetting when speaking with the clients, and it's important for you to start thinking about that one, is the non-functional requirement that will be defining the quality of what you are producing. Let's see the picture. This is a marvelous car that is a very powerful one that will be running in a lot of different roads with a high speed, things like that. But really, this is what you are being talking to produce, because if your client say that he wants a car, maybe what you are going to make is something totally different, because you are not aware about the responsiveness of the system, which is the usability that you are going to do. In electric car, for example, the mirrors maybe will not be required. The security is going to be an open car, is going to be having airbags and things like that. The portability. Then finally, what you are going to do is to create this kind of car. That is a toy car, that is fine. It's a car, has 4 wheels, it's a velocity car, but it's not what the client was success. Then you need to start thinking, when you collect the information from your clients, about functional and non-functional requirements that will be clearly determine the kind of the product that you need to do it. And maybe will be the opposite. The client is asking you for a toy car, and you are going to start creating a very sophisticated car that is not what the client needs. It's something totally different. Then we are going to go deeper in the blockchain, in the DLT world. Other thing that you need to consider is that one. Maybe you have been in the States, you probably remember this kind of height roads with multiple ways in each of the directions. You see, this is a picture that was last year in California, when the fires in the mountains near to Los Angeles. You see that it's totally collapsed. Even if the high speed is in the highway is huge. Imagine that one. If you have a situation that you have defined this, and imagine that you need to start looking if you are able to handle so many cars in a highway. Then you need to start thinking how many expected transactions per second you are going to be in your system, how many transactions per peak will be able to handle, and consider the cost to design or not, because you can imagine that this high road in Los Angeles is very, very expensive to build compared with the ones that we have in some of our roads in Europe. And that implies that you need to know also how big your transaction is going to be. It's not the same to have only one person per vehicle, or if you need to go a family. In your case, it's not going to be the same if you need to store only the hash, or you need to store the hash plus some additional data that you need to put in the system. Also the consensus mechanism, because some of the networks that we are going to go to see later, the consensus determine the velocity of the network. Then that is also important considering how many transactions you are going to expect that the system process for you. And finally, how big the network will be in the one that you are going to deploy your system, because if your system don't need a high network because it's a private network that you need to build for your use case, for your factory with some of the little shops that are providing deliverables to them, maybe you are not required to put your system in a very high networks like Ethereum or Bitcoin. We will see later. Then finally, the other two things that you need to take in mind is about the network data integrity and the security and privacy that you need, you require for your use cases. Imagine that you are driving also in this kind of roads in the countryside that is not usually very well performant. Your car will be slow, but will drive around that. Okay, then it's the same in your system. Maybe you don't need to require to go 120 kilometers per hour. Then this is something that you need to keep in mind at the beginning of your design. And I remember when I saw your projects in Budapest, some of them was apparently not require very high speeds, but another ones may require high speed networks and with a high volumes of transactions. Then keep in mind these points about the non-functional requirements. Then going to the DLT, now that you have that picture, you need to start defining, okay, I'm going to create a system and I need a DLT system behind that one in order to maintain credibility, trust and other things, okay? Then the first thing, the first choice that you have is a blockchain. Okay, the blockchain systems in the DLT world is a special site of DLT that contains the data chained in each of the blocks. You see that there is different implementation on a blockchain, different technologies. We will see later some of them in more advanced. But keep in mind that one is a block that is chained. That implies automatically that some of the performance of your system will be determined by this design. And it's nothing that you can do it because it's designed by default in the system. But keep in mind, the second thing that you can select is, okay, I need more process, then I'm going to use a directed acyclic graph type of platforms that is like the Corda or IOTA or Hashgraph, things like that. The data here is not chained, it's in a multiple graph. That is also implies automatically that you can imagine that the speed of this system is higher than the previous one. The other one that maybe you know or not is much modern and much actual that the previous one is Hashgraph. In Hashgraph, the way that the data is stored in the system is interconnected. It's not one after another like in blockchain. It's not 1 to 2 like in the DHG, but it's multiple sites. Also, that implies automatically high performance. That is important if you need to go to new system. But in opposition to that, there is few implementation of that one. There is few people around the world that is working on that, and maybe you are not considering that one because it's a high risk, and maybe in the future it's not going to be accepted by the community. Another new technology that has appeared recently is Holochain. Holochain is not the same kind of technology because it's distributing the data to each of the nodes of the system. Each of the nodes of the system is handled and mining the data. There is no validators in this kind of chains, and that implies automatically a very, very high performance. Some of the experts said that this is going to be the future of the DLTs, and all the people in the blockchains will move to a holochain technology or similar technology to that one. We will see it's a very new, then there is a lot of high risk if you decide to go to this kind of networks due to the support. But keep in mind, because maybe in the next year, next 2 years, it's going to be a surprise because the performance and the features that has implies in the design. And finally, I mentioned here Tempo. The Tempo type networks is a totally different DLTs, because instead of managing the data with timestamps that happens in the other ones, this one is by events. Is order in shard, has more than, if I remember well, about 14 billion shards, different shards, and then the data is stored in one of the shards that is distributed across all the nodes in the system. Also, is very recently, and also the expert said that is going to be the most powerful DLT platform in the next coming years. Okay, consider this high picture that will help you to know when you take your function requirement in which of these one will be your system. This is another taxonomy that is that was published by the IECO, the international organization of standardization, that classified also the different blockchains, that different DLTs regarding to if it's public, private, or permissionless. Also, that is important because when you start to design your system, you need to think, is going to be for the open public, or it's not required because it's a private consortium. It's something that is for me and my friends and nothing else. In that case, maybe you don't need to go to a public network, and you can create your own network with a very little nodes inside. Okay, then that is also important. And then I put here the different networks and in order that you keep an eye on that one. And you see that for the private side, there is a very famous one like the Hyperledger Fabric or Corda that are really designed for private consortiums. Even Quorum, that is an Ethereum, is designing was designed by JP Morgan, was thinked for a private consortium, or the Holochain that I had mentioned, that is thinked more in a private side more than an open one. But in the other side, you see the public sites. The most famous one, Bitcoin and Ethereum, that is the highest ones, but also Tempo, you see there, that is located in order to probably be the replacement for the other ones in the next future. And for the permissioned, that is like a private public, it's where Alastria Red10, that is the one that is evolution for Quorum, is located. But also you see there EPSI, that is the new network that is going to be created around Europe by the European Commission based on Besu, and also LACchain, that is another big network that is created in South America, but a private consortium, but it's going to be open to the public. That is there. Also is based on Besu, that is mentioned there. Besu is, if you know, is the one that was created by Pegasus, a subsidiary company for Consensus. And you see also there IOTA, that I'm going to mention later. Okay, it's a public permission, nearly to private, but public permission. You need to think about that also in your non-functional requirement, as I mentioned. My system is going to be open to the public, or is not required to be open to the public, because that automatically determines in which of the networks you need to work. Okay, then I'm going to only give you this one later, in order that you have these classifications. But you see there, if it's supporting smart contracts, if you want to have zero or low cost transaction, which is the network that you want to decide, for you, maybe that will be important, because as little companies, you need to start thinking about the cost that is going to your solution transaction or not. You see there that the Hyperledger Fabric and Besu, Quorum, Alastria is in the intersection for all of them with a consensus, an open consensus. You see Bitcoin that is outside of that one because it's not supporting the smart contract, is not supporting private transaction, and the cost is very highly dependent on the crypto. But you see also that in the zero cost side, that is IOTA or Ripple, okay? Then look on that one, and I will distribute that one in order you will have for future. Then starting with the systems that I mentioned, I am going to start with Ethereum and Bitcoin. If your non-functional requirements requires that your solution is going to be open to as much possible people, needs that you need to have open platform as much possible, but you don't need a very high transaction rate. Means that you don't need to have a payment in seconds or milliseconds because you don't need that from the non-functional requirements, and even you don't need a very high security system. You don't. You doesn't matter about the price of the transaction that will be variable, that is depending on the crypto that is using by the network. And also your system is going to be working during 1-2 years, but you don't expect a very long life for your product, because remember that in this kind of platforms that is very crypto dependent, maybe if the crypto value decrease, the network will be stopped because the miners decide to stop mining because it's expensive for them and they're not receiving back any profit. Then this is the two platforms that you need to mainly consider at the beginning: Ethereum and Bitcoin platforms. Okay, are the kind of use cases that you can deliver on that one is very extensive, mainly all of the different use cases of that one, but with these 5 points in mind. Okay, if your system needs high security or high transaction rate or a more controlled security, that is not the platforms that you need to select. Then going to the other point of the different platforms, that is the private consortiums. You have here Hyperledger Fabric like the best technology to use it. You can use it on other ones, as I mentioned before, but could be also Corda. But it is both of them are privacy oriented, and you don't need to be aware about if someone not allowed entering your system, and also in your non-functional requirement, you don't need open source solutions because your clients are going to be happy paying for a license or a maintenance. Then these two tools, Hyperledger Fabric, both from IBM, Oracle, and also Corda Technologies, could be the solution that you need to select. Okay, is very used for traceability problems, especially the IBM platforms, and that one. And always in controlled sectors, not open to public because it's not the design that was made at the beginning, and for little number of clients connected to the network. It's not a network designed to be thousands of millions of people connected to that one. It's for little factory connected to their distribution, for example, or people connecting in a very local region, but not in a very high situation, because if not, the transactions, even if that one is a very high performance network, is going to be decreased. Remember that in the Hyperledger Fabric and in Corda, the mining is done by only a selected numbers of people that is defining the ordering. Then really is a totally private and controlled network. Then keep in mind on that one, depending on your design. In the medium side of that one, not in the public, not in the private, as I mentioned, is a public permission. That are some of the clients of Ethereum platforms and also evolutions from the concept of a private consortium. Are multi-purpose platform, not really crypto required. You can implement crypto on top of that type of networks, but is not crypto required. The main one usually are Ethereum clients like Quorum. Quorum is the solution that you need to select if your use case is basically oriented to finance and exchange in a consortium. Because Quorum is privacy oriented. It's not really when I mentioned before public permission, I mentioned Quorum in the privacy, you remember, not in the public permission, because Quorum is not open to open public. Is in this side of privacy because it was created by JP Morgan. It's a smart contract basis, that is a point for that platform, but it's not supporting high volumes of transaction. In high scalability, you can put a lot of nodes, but it's not very high performance. Alastria is an evolution for Quorum. The Alastria network T is permission oriented, and the issue is that we have our people that were working on that one, the different panels, created a medium volume of transaction, about 1,000 transactions per second. That is maybe enough for public multi-sectors, okay? Again, if you need a very, very high number of transactions, that is also not your network. Finally, I'm going to mention here Besu. Besu is the project that was created by Pantheon, by Pegasus. That was a development company of Consensus. The issue is that has been designed from the beginning, then there is no the Ethereum security box inside, and is defined for a multi-purpose situations. Then is mainly located for public multi-sector. Means that if you need someone, some platform that will be allowed to have medium volume of transaction and also private transactions, maybe Besu will be your best choice for that particular use case. I'm going to enter now in IOTA. Some of you in Budapest mentioned me the possibility to use your cases connecting to sensors and things like that. And I mentioned to them that this is not a good solution if you wanted to implement in Ethereum platform. Why? Because Ethereum is not a high availability and high volume of transaction. If you want to use IoT, you need to use IOTA in this moment, or going to new platform like I mentioned, Holochain or Hashgraphs. Not in the blockchain world, because you need to have a very high rate of transaction per second. You need to have also a very high availability, and this is provided by IOTA system. The disadvantage, IOTA is not as open as the public platform, but the one thing that is an advantage is that last year IOTA now is supporting a smart contract that is open a lot of possibilities now working on that type of platform. Then if you wanted to use sensors, again, you need to go to this kind of platform if you want to have high volume of transaction. That's my last point. I think that maybe you have another networks in mind. Let me know because I will be happy to mention to you. But I think that this will have will bring you a overall picture and more clear situation about the different platforms. And that was my intention, but I'm happy to answer to you by mail with another type of platform, or if you have any doubt about that ones, okay?
Okay, so thank you, Juan Luis. So now if someone has a question that you want to make to Juan Luis, You have the option to raise up your hand and we can open your mic, or you can type it through the screen as well. So if anyone's got a question, raise up your hand. Miguel Prados. So I will open your microphone, Miguel. There you go.
Hello, everyone. Just I want to say hello and thank you for these lessons. I just want to mention that sure, IOTA works like magic with us. We're using IOTA's MAN channels to record transactions, consumption transactions from electrical power, and it works like magic. And I think problems can have a mixed approach. So I'm not a DLT maximalist. So for instance, we use different blockchains for different purposes. We use Ethereum for voting purposes. We use IOTA for IoT recording measures. We use also Ethereum for rating of providers. We use Bitcoin Lightning for micro-invoicing. And we've been studying the use of Eternity for Oracle. So, in our point of view, the correct approach is to be like DLT agnostic. So you can sort out different problems with different solutions. I think I don't think there is one blockchain sort out everything, but many blockchains for different solutions. So.
Yes, totally agree with you, Miguel. You need to consider the system as a whole, and it's the same like any other technology situation that when you are designing your system, you can design that even for databases, you can store the data in different databases in your system depending on the uses. I totally agree with you. I think that the best approach for your platform for your use case is to use different blockchains from your off-chain system, storing in each of the blockchain the data that you require. Totally agree with you, Miguel.